I'm going to be honest. Masterpiece. The ultimate bedroom.
Where are the beds?
Who needs beds when you've got...
Pull to open.
Pull to open.
Yes, and what do you do?
You've got a whole world inside your head.
I know. It's funny, isn't it?
Now, eyes on the box.
Oh, caretaker.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Dun 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 Hello and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to do all of Doctor Who, the TV show, in very, very random story order, and to do the sound of drums as a completely butchered version of the Doctor Who title. My name is Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Paschal, and we are proud of our butchering here on Pull to Open. We're all about the butchering. We have
That's
knives. Right. You should see all the knives out of the shot if you're watching on YouTube that I actually have in this room. No, yeah, Chris and I are a couple guys not employed as butchers currently, but we have been journalists and are journalists, and we have occasionally written about Doctor Who, love the show, and have been doing this random journey for some time now. And sometimes it's a lonely journey with just the two of us. So I wanted to let everyone know that it'll be a little less lonely next week. So next week, we're going to have a couple of guests on the show to help join and comment on whatever episode the randomizer will spin up for us at the end of this episode. And those will be the guys from the Cloister Bell podcast, Rob and Liam. They're going to come by here to Pull to Open. We'll have cross podcast energy happening. It's going to be a great time.
So exciting. This is going to be our first four-person TARDIS, basically.
I know. I'm excited, but I'm also a little nervous about how this is going to look on YouTube. I'm cutting it. Do I do 4 vertical, the 4 quad? Tune in next week to find out what we did.
Well, we have been. I feel like the randomizer has prepared for this moment in the same way that the Watcher did, because it's been giving us so many 3-companion, basically 4-person TARDIS stories recently. So,
we're going to have our own crowded TARDIS.
Exactly. So we're going to have to figure out who's Adric, or maybe I'll be Turlo. I'll dress up as the public school boy.
Who's Ace? Who gets to be Ace and carry around the Nitro 9 and smash things with a baseball bat?
Was Ace ever part of a full-person TARDIS?
Line forms here.
Anyway, we're getting a little off topic, because the topic on Pull to Open, as ever, is our random journey, and you have clicked on this podcast in part because you saw the title of the show that we are about to review, the title of the story we're about to review, or maybe you didn't. But anyway, I'm going to tell you about our random journey and how we've been, where we've been to. 4 episodes ago, we were at the OK Corral and the Last Chance Saloon with the gunfighters, that Hartnell story that is sort of, we decided, deservedly not very popular. 3 episodes ago, the first...
Stop kicking the gunfighters.
Don't kick the gunfighters.
Sorry, okay?
Don't kick the gunfighters when it's down and playing dead. And pretending to have been shot. Yeah, have some sweet, but don't crunch that sweet, Doctor, because that's exactly what you did 3 episodes ago. In our first real episode of 2023, not counting the clip show, when we went to the Celestial Toymaker, and that evil Toymaker made the Doctor play a boring game and then eat a sweet, diabolical. I tell you,
the worst babysitter ever.
2 episodes of Pull to Open ago, we went to a country house in 1925 for Black Orchid, where the murder was almost beside the point. The Doctor had a lovely time doing it. And then we rocketed forward in time to Revolution of the Daleks, which we said at the time was the last holiday special. We were so sure of ourselves that this Whittaker, Captain Jack, Chris North special was the last we'd seen. Of course it was not. Was it, Pete?
No, it was not. And this is now our semi-regular correction segment of Pull to Open, which we have to get a correction in. Of course, the last holiday special was in fact Eve of the Daleks. I don't know why we didn't think of that because it's so fresh. It's almost too recent, I guess.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's not very
almost
holiday
exactly a year
specially.
ago.
It's not very holiday specially, but then again, neither is Revolution of the Daleks. So. So we were wrong about that. Rule number 1: pull to open lies. Thanks for not correcting us too much. And anyway, that we have rocketed back in time again after Revolution of the Daleks to another holiday special because the randomizer listened to us a few episodes ago and we said, I believe you said, Pete, take us to a holiday special. Now it is just giving us 2 holiday specials in a row because we are at The Doctor, The Widow, and The Wardrobe, that Christmas special all the way back in 2011. And I hesitate to say it, but that is 12 to 13 years ago at this point. Matt Smith's second holiday special. And it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
He had 4. This is halfway through.
We'll get to it in the pod, but this is like when I think the Steven Moffat era of Doctor Who is really taken full hold, and his vision of the show and what this episode it's full. That vision is on full display. So, whatever you think of it, this is kind of peak Moffat.
He's at his Moffatiest for better or worse, and we'll talk about what that means. But first, we shall plunge into the cool, refreshing pool known as the feedback loop.
Hello, feedback loop. Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Normally, I'm here asking everyone listening to please head over to their nearest podcast app, usually the Apple Podcast app, to leave a review. I'm still doing that, to be clear. Please do that. Reviews really do help the show. But what I really want to start off with this time, because it dovetails so nicely what we just talked about in terms of correcting ourselves, is a special contribution from one of our fans. And on the show, we often talk about bingo cards. We talk about bingo cards that we fill in, or did we get all the 2 episoders from the classic series, for example? Did we get all the Claws of Axis references in the entire series? That's kind of a smaller bingo card, but it's fun bingo cards.
I think we got that.
Yeah, I think we did.
We need a sound effect, like we just hit the button, like, we've done it, all Claws of Axis references.
So we've always mused, should we actually create some bingo cards and have some fun with that? I'm thinking, it's in the back of our head, sure, whenever we stop having day jobs, maybe we'll have time for that. But luckily, we have you guys, the fans, and you've always risen up to do the things that we always could only dream of doing. And we could never do it as well, frankly, because one of our fans, and it's Joe, Jingle Joe Rep on Twitter, has created the first official pull to open. I'm declaring it official as one of those to pull to open. The first official pull to open bingo card, and it's amazing. You could follow our Twitter, and it pull to open 63 on Twitter if you're unsure, and just check it out. We've got it in our timeline, and it's just awesome. I won't read every single square, but I love that there's a square. Google it.
Google it.
Quotes our official catchphrase, and that one of the squares is successful TLDW, which of course is our with an exclamation point, because of course is our regular segment where we summarize the show in record time, and sometimes we do it and sometimes we need a little extra time, which would probably be an unsuccessful TLDW. And of course, what we've already done, we've hit that bingo card last time for sure. Something blatantly wrong was said without correction. That's one of the squares.
Yes, I was going to say, we've already in this episode filled in at least 3 squares here. We've got the randomizer answers a request from 3 episodes ago, and I'm pretty sure that was right around when you asked for holiday specials. Something blatantly wrong is said without correction. Yes, we got that. The sound of drums, we always have it, so that's the center square. We've already got that. I think Pete, you have to do a very cheesy segue. Little nitpick. That's not how we supposed to segue.
Just you wait.
And I got to do history corner. Got to say the randomizer is scary. That's very me. And you, the person reading this, are responded to in the feedback loop. I feel like we've got some inception going on there, because we're responding to the person who first wrote this in the feedback loop. I'm not even sure what TARDIS we're in right now, Pete. It's a Legopolis moment.
Totally. And I love that they've thought about this, because they have all of our ratings, the Dalek, the Ogron, the Professor Hater, the Viscount Banger, and they're all in separate rows. So
Yes.
it is like, they put some thought into this, and that like, hey, this is, it could actually be used. So it's pretty cool stuff. Go check it out on our Twitter, Pull to Open 63, and fill it in.
Yeah, I'm looking forward.
You can do it again and again.
I'm looking forward to seeing if Pete and Chris disagree about the episode is going to be filled in for this one.
Well, if you think about it, we just teased our next episode with 4 people. We could theoretically fill in all 4 of those ratings.
Wow.
Depending on what we all think of it, which would be like that. Because ordinarily, if it's just the 2 of us, it'd be hard to get all 4 of those, but you could have a full bingo card when we have guests.
You really could. And yeah, so that's your warning, your early warning for next week. Print out this bingo card, start filling it in next week. And if you wanted to make it a drinking game, I'm not going to stop you. I feel like, the randomizer is telling us that it's basically the holidays for at least a month after Christmas. So, You want to turn this into a holiday drinking game, you go for it. We are not going to judge.
And if you ever fill in the entire thing, go ahead and send it to Pull to Open headquarters with a self-addressed envelope, and you will be given your no prize in that envelope. Awesome stuff. So thanks so much, Joe, for making that. Good stuff. And that will don't have a cheesy segue, but I'm going to go to some of our loyal fans from Joe, who's a super loyal fan, to some of our other loyal fans who often listen on Spotify. So I'm talking to you, Spotify listeners. So there are 2 things in Spotify that I just want to make people aware of. So if you're listening on Spotify, you can rate the show. So please do, in addition to possibly leaving a review in the Apple Podcast app, on your Spotify app. It has to be the mobile app. It doesn't exist on desktop. But if you go to the mobile app, you can rate the podcast with however many stars you like. And for some reason, all those stars in this Dr. Widow in the Wardrobe that were on the top of the Christmas trees, I think there was a multiple of 5.
Yeah, that's right. The life force... Yeah. The life force is very strongly veering. If you want to be strong and contain all these stars, all these life forces, then you do 5 stars. It also, because I believe our current ranking in Spotify is 5 stars. That's the average. So you wouldn't want to bring down the average, would you?
Yeah.
Would you?
Don't bring down the average.
Don't
us. Bring us down. Yeah.
Look at us. Do we deserve
please
that?
Go ahead and rate the app. So another bonus on Spotify. There are polls that we can push to Spotify. So what we're going to do, starting with this Pull to Open, we're going to send some of the answers to our 4 questions to Doomsday. Now, we do the 4 questions to Doomsday at the end of every commentary, and we give up possibilities for where's the Clara Sprinter? What if the evil plot had succeeded? And often there are multiple of these. We have multiple explanations. So we're going to put those. We're going to pick one of our questions this week, whatever seems the most appropriate, and we're going to put that in a poll. Where do you think the Clara Sprinter is? What's the best explanation? What if the evil plot had succeeded, etc.? Those kind of things, and we'll see how that. So we want to get your voice. We want to hear where you think these things are, and if we get enough people voting and this becomes a regular thing, maybe this takes place. The results of these polls will go to our codex, so that we'll have the clear answer, the winning answer to each of these things in forever locked in Pull to Open lore. So please, if you're on Spotify, watch for those and give us a vote.
I'm very excited about this because I have noticed that little Q&A line. That Spotify is how I watch and or listen to this podcast, because I watch or listen to this podcast, of course.
Yes.
And
you're a discerning Pull to Open listener. You're one of our most loyal. You've also subscribed to the YouTube, which we'll talk about in a second. But I think just recently. But I'm saying that maybe we could also, for that Q&A, let the people decide
Let the people vote on whether this is a Viscount Banger, an Ogron, a Dalek, or a Professor Hater.
Oh, yes, for sure. The viewers'
very
rating.
exciting. Yeah, we could be overruled, which seems appropriate. We are not the 3 who rule. We're not even the 2 who rule. You, dear listeners, are the ones who rule, and your rating could rule over ours. So, check out that Q&A for some very exciting questions.
All right, so we'll remind you about that again at the end of the podcast. And also reminding you, we are on YouTube. We are at youtube.com/pull-to-open. So season 3, the early part of season 3 of Pull to Open, the podcast, is still going, posting to YouTube every Wednesday. The most recent commentary we posted was Closing Time, which was a fun one.
Which is in this same season.
It is, that's right.
Yeah, once again, the randomizer is drawing its own connections, knows where we're up to and posting on YouTube. And I'll just say it so you can fill in that bingo square. I'm scared of the randomizer.
Time echoes of the randomizer picking up on. But yes, Closing Time just posted. So check those out. Of course, all of our social videos, so those shorts that we cut to TikTok, they're also on YouTube. You also get our plot summaries. And again, our plot summaries on YouTube will be cut for YouTube. So going forward, you're going to get that horizontal aspect ratio for everything we're posting to YouTube in terms of a plot summary. So that's a fun thing to look forward to. Definitely a good reason to subscribe there, because we really want to get to 1,000 subscribers sooner than later in 2023. We passed 500. We're inching towards 600, but I think we can explode forward. So please, if you're subscribing to the podcast anywhere and you haven't subscribed on YouTube, and you don't mind giving your data to Google, go over there and also subscribe on YouTube.
Yes, don't just Google it, YouTube it.
If you don't like Google, just create a burner account and go over and subscribe. It's going to help. We also have good comments on YouTube, and I would love to just highlight a comment. I don't think there's a ton of things to discuss in it, but it was just a weird, interesting comment of the week. So one of our podcasts up there is for the King's Demons, which was an early one we did like a couple of years ago now. But there is a bit where we sort of talk about the Iron Maiden in the King's Demons and sort of the torture and Peter Davison, maybe in terms of like an evil plot succeeding, sort of getting his head cut off. And that actually happens in a Big Finish adventure. Sorry to spoil it, but it's called Necromantia. And the weird coincidence is that I just listened to this Big Finish like last week. And this person just listened to our podcast and made a reference and says it's Ethan Melton. And he says, a scene where the Fifth Doctor gets his head sliced off, like in Necromantia. And I'm like, boom, like, whoa, crazy Kismet stuff going on here.
Talk about headcanon. So he actually literally gets his head separated from his body and doesn't regenerate.
That happens. It happens. It doesn't regenerate. How does he get out of that one? Well, you're going to have to listen to Big Finish the podcast.
Yeah. Well, if
Big Finish, the untelevised Doctor Who adventure, I should say.
It's a very extensive. I was going to say a very extensive podcast where they do live action Doctor Who. They've been doing it since before podcasts were a thing. Wow. Well, we should definitely add that to our growing list of big finishes that we talk about on the show that I really want to listen to. And yeah, good one. Good choice.
That one actually has obviously Peter Davison. It's part of the Perry and Aramem storyline, which spans a number of big finishes. And it's a very unusual adventure. I'll say that. Not just for the reason that the Doctor gets his head cut off, but Perry is interesting. It's interesting to hear Perry written sort of like a proper 19-year-old college student. And I think sort of people who write Perry sometimes forget to give her a little bit more sort of American girlism. And that's full on here. Right. And this is also like the episode where they reveal her hometown, or at least where she went to school, which I believe is Baltimore. So,
okay.
Interesting choice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's where Nicola Bryant's accent came from.
Exactly.
Imported straight from Baltimore. I would have recognized it easily. All right.
It's the South Croydon part of Baltimore, certainly.
Wow.
All right. So that's that. Obviously, we're also on Instagram. We're also at Pull to Open 63. And, of course, on TikTok at Pull to Open. TikTok still going strong. We just did our third live. Had a great discussion. And what we're going to start doing on TikTok lives, which we do every week before we tape the podcast, we're going to start attacking some of those Uber concepts that come up in the podcast. So something that's come up recently a few times has been what constitutes a companion. Because when we were talking about Revolution of the Daleks, we thought, is Robertson a companion now? Because he journeyed in the TARDIS a couple times.
Yeah.
Arguably. But
interesting. We're going to be talking about that more because Doctor Who in the Wardrobe is also a question. There's a big question about whether the kids and the mom and that are companions. They were described as companions by Doctor Who magazine, which I think was going a little too far to tease the story. But they talked about Cyril being the youngest ever companion. But they don't travel in the TARDIS, but they do go through dimensions anyway. We'll get into all of that, but it is a very meaty question, and the randomizer is throwing us some very interesting examples. I think this all started because of the policeman in Black Orchid. And the question of whether their short hop in the TARDIS should count. We'll be debating that on TikTok Live next Sunday. Yes,
I think we're going to need to narrow down the key episodes that zero in on the dilemmas here. And I'm scared of the randomizer now myself because I just realized we're probably daring it to take us to the Daleks master plan.
We really are, yes. With Sarah Kingdom. The ultimate question of she was always counted as a companion, but should she be? Because it's all within one story. I don't know. Anyway, we also got interesting comments on TikTok, and I'm very curious to hear the backstory of the one that you've pulled out, Pete, because this is a comment that gets into some interesting headcanon.
It is. Honestly, I'm bringing this up. Well, I'm just going to read the comment, and I'll tell you why I'm bringing it up. So we have a TikTok comment of the week, and it's on one of our videos on Black Orchid. And there's a Black Orchid fun episode, lots of great interaction between all the companions. There's obviously been a lot of shipping of companions in the Davison era, and this comment speaks exactly to that. So the comment is from the Scottish Nerd, great handle, and the Scottish Nerd asks, "Isn't it canon?" I know, dirty word in Doctor Who. That's in his comment in parentheses. But isn't it canon that Nyssa and Tegan get together? And he has some creative spelling for Nyssa and Tegan, but we'll overlook that. Well, listen, let me be clear. Let me answer the question directly first. It's not. It's definitely not canon. But
unless I missed a Fifth Doctor story.
Yeah.
Maybe this is in Big Finish. I don't know.
If they did it in Big Finish, we don't really know. I don't think they've done it in Big Finish.
Is there Big Finish After Dark series?
Now, but I've seen this. This has come up, I think, even in a few other comments on our TikTok. So I want to sort of throw a lot of cold water on this, as much as the imagery might be fun. It's a little bit like the ultimate thing that I think negates this point of view is when Nyssa leaves in Terminus.
Yes,
the goodbye between her and Tegan. I mean, that is not what you would expect between people who mean so much to each other and are lovers, right? They're best friends. They're bonded through their connection with the Doctor. Certainly they love each other as friends, but in my mind, that's pretty much it, and I think that's fine, right? It's fine to ship, and you can obviously, as a fan, see the show. I'm not telling anyone, don't see the show you don't want to see. If you want to see that and that's your thing, go ahead. But I think taking it a step further and making it something official or even sort of semi-unofficial in the show doesn't really add anything. You can have your own Doctor Who in your mind, but I just, there's clearly no intent for this, and I do think it's okay for just relationships to be like a little more conventional, right? Like best friends are a thing, and that is still very meaningful, right? It's like people trying to read all this sort of hanky-panky that went on in the TARDIS. And yes, they did go there in the new series for sure. But you don't really need to get to the lover aspect of Doctor Who, whether it's the Doctor and a companion or companions with each other, for those relationships not to be deep and not to be meaningful and not to really resonate. And I think it is okay for people who are clearly written as friends to just stay friends. And that's my view. Anyway, go ahead.
I will say that this brings up something that we didn't discuss last week about Revolution of the Daleks, is the revelation within that Captain Jack had his own suite in the TARDIS with, was it a cocktail bar? Was it a pool? I can't remember what he said he had in that suite.
I can't remember either, but yeah.
That was not confirmed. Now, that would almost certainly be canon, that there was Captain Jack hanky-panky on the TARDIS, but probably with a stream of, historical strays who he'd picked up during the adventures. I don't know when that would have been, when he would have had a suite, but, that's sort of a nice interjection of potential headcanon there.
Well, I could definitely fill in like when that would have happened. That would have happened with the Ninth Doctor, obviously. Yep. And I like the idea that between the end of the Doctor dances and the beginning of Boomtown, there has been a lot of time that has passed. And it's actually very clear. It's almost explicit that a lot of time has passed, because Jack is wearing something completely different. His familiarity with Rose and the Doctor at that point is so close. You remember all the flirtiness that Rose and Jack had. That's gone. Now they're just friends. And they seem like they've been friends for a while. So in my mind, there was like perhaps a couple of seasons of adventures. And I know there's at least been books set in this era. I don't know if Eggleston has only recently come back to the show, and there's all the issues with Barrowman and stuff. So I don't know if that's ever going to be filled in with big finishes, but certainly there's been stuff written there. So, and sure, he had a suite. Yeah. Sure. He was a primetime companion.
You could imagine maybe one dark and starry night, Jack and Rose, got all that tension out of their relationship, and maybe Nyssa and Tegan did too. Maybe, back in the... But this is the great thing about Doctor Who. You can make your own headcanon, you can make your own slash fiction, whatever you want to do. You may have to explain why Tegan is so into Sir Robert in Black Orchid when there are two Nyssas. I mean, surely if Tegan fancies Nyssa, she would be so into the Nyssa and Anne combo that she wouldn't even have time for Sir Robert. Or maybe she's over it by that point. Anyway, do comment again, please, Scottish Nerd, because I'd love to know where you got that from. Perhaps we're missing something. Perhaps we're missing a big finish. I don't know, but let's keep that conversation going.
Yeah. Please keep the conversation going at Pull to Open on TikTok. Be one of our followers, one of our 10,000, now 300 followers, and watch for those lives every Sunday, happening around 12:30 Eastern Time. Alrighty, well, there's not a lot of other business, but there was an interview with Russell T Davies in, I think, GQ.
Correct.
Could be wrong.
Yes.
And he doesn't add a lot in terms of the new information, but he did come around, basically confirm some things. One, that there's more money now for Doctor Who,
but
because
not
of the
10
Disney
million.
Plus.
Not
right.
10 million an episode. Less than 10 million.
Yeah, exactly. And he all but confirms that there will be spin-offs. I mean, I think we can almost take it as confirmation, because he has a lot of comments around sort of cinematic or franchise universes. He has a lot of praise, for example, for Star Trek and what they're doing. And he specifically calls out that they're doing so much content now. There's essentially new Star Trek every single week of the year. So you get like a total of roughly around 50 plus episodes across all of their properties every year. And that, it seems like he's basically laying down as like, that's our goal. That's we aspire to do that. And whether it's, monster centric episodes, whether it's stuff like the Sarah Jane, he actually talks about the spinoffs. This comment that he makes in the article comes across as a little arrogant, but I actually think he's totally entitled to make it, because he said, like, well, we had spinoffs when he was last time he was in charge. and those spin-offs suffered when he left. And that's true. And I don't think that's him being arrogant. I think that's him acknowledging his responsibility as the showrunner, and that, or rather, the showrunner's responsibility. Like, there needs to be a steward of the universe, right? With like Kevin Feige in Marvel. And I think there's no doubt in anyone's head as if Kevin Feige ever left that job without a proper sort of successor, the universe would suffer. So I think that's basically what he's getting at. So looking forward to it. I mean, it's gonna be an interesting era of Doctor Who that we're getting into. And I honestly, like, almost in the same way I was uncorking the champagne with the new series came out back in 2005. Like, he's thinking about Doctor Who for the next decade and further, and that fills me with so much confidence and joy.
Yeah, he says, I thought the streaming platforms are ready, the spin-offs are ready, which is interesting. You almost see him going a little too far in that direction. The spin-offs are ready, and then he ropes it back in. Oh, I always believed in spin-offs when I was there. The spin-offs declined when I left, and I can see why. After 2008, money became scarce. So, he's
that too,
he's pulling back the curtain a little bit. But I'll take issue with your saying RTD isn't arrogant. I think he is, and I think he revels in it. I think that's one of his strengths, is that he's arrogant. And you also kind of get it in here. Like, RTD is such a unimpeachable Doctor Who fan. We know that. But he says something about the classic series, and I'm not sure if it's in this interview. He's basically saying that one of the reasons he wanted to come back wanted to come along in the first place in 2005 was that he never thought that the show had been done properly. Like, a big fan of the classic, such a big fan that he's throwing in Mavic Chen into the new series that he's writing right now. Really old school William Hartnell reference, but never thought it was done properly. And there's a point in the writer's tale where he talks to Michael Grade, of course, the guy responsible for Doctor Who's death, or many almost deaths in the 80s.
Permanent hiatus.
Yes, and Grade said to RTD, like, oh, you must hate me. And RTD said back to him, no, you were right. It was shit. Like, he's not he's not afraid to really call out the show when it goes bad. And I think that's
and to be clear, he's kind of referring to the late era there of the classic series. Like, he doesn't think the whole thing was shit, but it is like, I think there's a widespread sort of acknowledgement of exactly what you're saying on all true fans, and that it's like, I've talked about my friend Steve before in the podcast, where he actually grew up with the novels, and so for a lot of the Doctor Who adventures he saw, he read the Target novelizations first and then saw the show, and it's almost like a downgrade, right? Even though the show came first, it's like, oh, you in your mind, when you hear something, when you read something like The Power of Krull and these giant tentacles, coming out of a pipe or something like that, you're just like, wow, that sounds so awesome. And then on screen, it's like this fiberglass thing or whatever that the Clactor's clearly like making it move on his own. Yeah. And you almost have to see Doctor Who, what's happening on screen in the classic series, as like an icon for what is really sort of happening. And we've kind of talked about this a couple times in the podcast, where it's like the show is this it's almost like the stage play of what really happened in the cosmos in the future, right?
Exactly. So, I've said this in the past, that I think that is best thing to look at. The best way to look at it is, the BBC was given the license to the Doctor's Adventures by the Doctor, because he's such a fan of Britain. Of course, he wants to see. This actually dovetails nicely with something that Matt Smith said in the interview that he did for Dr. Widow and the Wardrobe. I was recently reading for the show, and he said something like, who wouldn't want to be Doctor Who on Christmas? Well, first of all, he calls the character Doctor Who, which is interesting. But secondly, it's like, who wouldn't want to be Doctor Who on Christmas? You sit, you unwrap all your presents, you have a great dinner, and then on television, there's you. There's an adventure starring you. And I love this idea that the Doctor was watching the show, and that he's watching this sort of BBC production of his first 7 regenerations, or the first 7 that he can remember. And he's like, that's great. It didn't quite happen like that. It's, those monsters look a bit rubbery. Not sure they're going to really scare anyone, but, Daleks are spot on. Daleks are very accurate.
Exactly. And maybe you should just give it a rest for 15 years and try again.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
The effects are better, and you have 15 years, handful of heartbeats to a Time Lord.
Yeah, exactly.
fine
He's
with it.
like, I'll send in Billy Shipton to get the BBC more money
There you
selling
go.
DVDs. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. More headcanon, folks. You get it right here.
Put that. You fill in that bingo card.
All right.
Alrighty.
It's time, I think.
Closing out. Yep. Closing out the other business, and we can avoid it no longer. It's time to talk about the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe.
And we always start with TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch Too Long Doctor Who. Or in this case, if you're watching a Christmas, it might be Too Drunk Doctor Who. Which is certainly my first, my issue, as I mentioned last week, with the Doctor and the Widow of the Wardrobe, is that this sort of passed over my head when I watched it on Christmas Day 2011, possibly because I maybe had a little too much sherry by then. I don't know what the story was, but it's entirely possible. So yeah, I think for this week only, we'll call it Too Drunk Doctor Who. But Pete, you are not too drunk because you are
TDDW. All right.
Yeah. Let's just change it. That's an extra D, the double D, like the double D Daleks we talked about last week.
Pretend this is vodka. Yeah.
Yes. Pete, you are not too drunk for TLDW. You are ready. You are on the spot.
Gotcha.
We allot.
I'm not going to say whether I'm hungover or not, but I am not too drunk.
We allot, as you know, 1 minute. But I've been hitting the sherry already myself. No, I haven't. 1 minute per new series episode, which is what this is. Is it a little bit longer as a Christmas special? I didn't look at the runtime.
Actually, I didn't even look at the runtime. I think it's not as long as Eve of the Daleks. Definitely doesn't feel as long.
No.
But I don't think it's much long. Yeah. Okay. Here it is. 60 minutes. It's actually a full 60 minutes. So it's like I'll get 1 second for every minute if it's a minute.
So would you like 1 minute 15 seconds?
If you're offering,
I feel like
I clearly need it after the last couple of performances on TLDW I've had, so I'm not going to say no to it.
All right, well, let's do it because so much of this story is about the time vortex and forgiveness and putting right what has gone wrong and all of that stuff. So
don't put too much pressure on. I got to get all the themes in there now too. What?
All right. Well, let's get going just as soon as I pull up my stopwatch on the official pull to open summary of the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe without notes in 1 minute and 15 seconds starting now.
So the Doctor's on a spaceship, and it explodes, and at the last second, he gets a spacesuit on that's flying away from the spaceship. He crashes in 1941 London, and he's befriended by this woman named Madge, who takes him back to his TARDIS. And then a few years later, then it's 1941, so that was a little earlier. Her husband is about to be shot down in the war, is apparently shot down. The Doctor goes to where her and her two children are now
30 seconds.
Basically going to celebrate Christmas. She's not telling them that her husband's dead because she doesn't want to ruin Christmas for them. So he makes the place awesome, tries to give them a really nice Christmas. He gives a special present that is actually a portal to another world. And one of the kids opens it early and goes in, and it's this sort of winter wonderland. But then this thing, this Christmas ornament that grows from one of the trees cracks open. It's an egg that catches a tree creature, and the tree creature leads the kid to this tower where all the trees are going to turn all their mental energy to, because they're about to be vaporized by this Androzani team that's going to turn them into fuel or something. The Doctor follows them, and their mother follows them. They all get together at this tower. They use Madge's mental energy to go back to Christmas Day, and saves her husband.
Hey, yeah, I'll take that.
60.
Close enough.
What was that? 76 seconds, maybe.
you got a few extra seconds. Didn't quite get to the denouements. Would you like to just give us an extra 5 seconds on the denouement?
The Doctor is convinced to go back to Amy and Rory and tell him he's not dead, and he cries.
Yes, he cries real human tears. And it's nothing to do with Amy's water gun that she has ready for Christmas carolers.
Yeah.
Good job. Otherwise, I think you got a little like the kids. You may have been a little wrapped up in what the doctor was doing in the house,
Yeah.
and
That's good too.
all of the presents that he provides. He really, there's big sort of and it downloads comics from the future. I don't know when to stop vibes in this episode. I love those scenes. I'll just say that up front. I went the doctor making the house kid friendly and installing the lemonade taps, and then saying the words "I know" when the kids kind of gasp at it.
And Matt Smith is so good.
He really is.
That. I mean, he is the uncle that you always wanted. He's super fun. Like this is, as I was sort of saying in the pre-show, this is peak Moffat. I mean, they've been working together, Moffat and Smith, at this point for basically 2 series.
Yes.
This is the second Christmas special. Everyone has hit their stride, and it's full on. And so then you also get the full on vision of Steven Moffat's Doctor Who, which is Doctor Who as a fairy tale. And everyone is leaning into it and loving it. And Matt Smith is definitely one of the best things about this episode. He's got amazingly hilarious dialogue throughout. He's got very thoughtful and emotive dialogue as well. But those scenes, one after another, with all the rooms and the kids, I mean, what a treat. And, my daughter, spoiler alert for what my kids thought of it. They really liked it. My daughter probably liked it even more because it's like, she's exactly that age. She's 9 years old. And when I asked her what she thought of the episode, the lemonade thing is one of the first things she talked about. It's just such a great kid thing.
It really is. And there was supposed to be, I don't know if you came across this in your research, there was supposed to be an extra room. The house that the doctor / caretaker takes over. By the way, it's lovely that he's called the caretaker ahead of the Capaldi episode. But there was supposed to be a haunted house in the basement.
Right. Yeah, I did. I read about that.
Yeah.
And, wise choice to excise that, it sounded like. It sort of sounds a little tonally weird. I mean, they could have pulled it off, but
I mean, it's sort of you sort of have to go an extra stretch to say, like, you're trying to get these kids happy because of the sad news that they're about to receive about their dad. Well, does a haunted house really do that? I mean, it gives them spooks and scares and all of that, which Doctor Who does itself. But maybe given the bad news they're about to receive, probably not the best thing.
I think it's the right call to get rid of that for exactly the reason you said. I could see why they would do it, not just for a fun thing, but it's kind of a mislead.
Yes.
So to have kind of a mislead of like, oh, is the haunted house going to be taken over by some monster? And that's the story. Yeah. Potentially you might think that and keep you even a little more on your toes. But
good point.
In that sense, I think it's not good enough to sort of include.
To your point of how good Smith is in this story, he actually has an ad-libbed line that Moffat loves so much that he kept in, which is when Cyril, the younger child, gets away and makes it look like he's sleeping in his bed by putting the teddy bear and the blanket over the teddy bear, and that the doctor reacts with, that teddy bear and that blanket trick, so damn you, Cyril.
I think he says he's good.
He's good.
Well,
that was
sincerity, right?
Yes.
Like he's just like, oh man.
And that was good. Matt Smith. That was Matt Smith's line. So that's a measure of like how much he was into it, and particularly the role of the caretaker in the house. But we shouldn't go too far into this without recognizing that, as I'm sure all 15 of you Pull to Open superfans who've actually listened to our very first episode, which was about all of the Christmas stories, as you know, we have actually commented on this before.
Yeah.
And we had, which is interesting because I don't remember rewatching it for that episode, but apparently I did.
Yeah. So funnily enough, our very first Pull to Open podcast was about all the Christmas specials, and we did sort of rapid fire reviews of them from memory. We hadn't watched them all or whatever in prep. Very seat of the pants, our first one. But it's funny. This is sort of more revealing about us, I think, than the episode, in that even though I had sort of a couple minutes of commentary, I zeroed in on the fan nitpick, which I will zero in on again, by the way.
Androzani. Yeah.
But I mean, I sort of stand by what I originally said, which is not the nitpick, but I originally said, like, I think it's probably the most family friendly Christmas episode. Definitely. I've seen this multiple times with my family. This might be the Christmas episode I've seen the most. So I'm very familiar with the beats, which surprises me. I didn't squeeze it all into TLDW, but whatever.
Too much. You're too close to it.
And I had the nitpick about the trees for starters, but also mostly the Androzani stuff. Like the Androzani mention really bothers me as a fan because it's so random. Like it's basically like just citing an old episode for no reason.
Yes,
and it's just to do it, because there's virtually nothing that connects the events of this episode or the people in it with the very rich sort of Earth colony gone awry universe of the Caves of Androzani, which is certainly an episode worthy of a sequel. This is not it. This is just, let's pick a random planet out of the Doctor Who canon and just say that's what this isn't that planet, but it is related to the planet. And you could have just as easily said, hey, it's I don't know, Iridius or Exelon or Clom, like it doesn't really matter like what planet you cite. And I think this is just thinks it's fan service, but it's just fan irritation service, really. Like, just make up something new and have it be that. I mean, why did you need to reference something in the old classic series and then add to it? It was just kind of extraneous.
I think I can probably answer that, which is Caves of Androzani is probably one of the shows that casual fans might have seen, or at least heard of. It is so reputed to be, clearly the Fifth Doctor's best adventure, possibly the best Doctor Who ever. So I can see how...
It's definitely ranked first ever in the poll. I think 2009 poll. Anyway, go on.
The 2000, not 2014 for sure, Doctor Who magazine. But anyway, so I can see why Moffat might think that an Androzani mention would cut through more than some of the other classic mentions. But yeah, to connect this in any way, you really have to do some headcanon about they decided that storing all that Spectrox was a bad idea, and they're going to burn trees for fuel instead.
They call them Androzani trees, and I guess it's they're Androzani trees are sentient. I mean, I don't want to unpack this too much because it's clearly just thrown in for whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a tree farm. It's an easy line to miss, but it's a tree farm. The people, what are they? Are they mercenaries, miners, security? I don't know what they are. They're just driving the platform robot thingy.
Yeah.
They say they're from Androzani Major, which implies this planet is not Androzani Major, but is it then in the Androzani system? Because these are Androzani trees, but I guess you could presumably grow a farm anywhere, technically. So it could even be further away. So, I mean, again, I don't think it's even worth the amount of brain power I'm throwing at it right now. It's just, random reference, planet, trees, etc. Although I will question, like, if this is a farm and you're growing sentient trees, how can you in good conscience melt them down? I mean, I guess presumably you could say they just don't know they're sentient. But still, it just seems like a pretty inefficient way to get fuel. Future technology notwithstanding.
Exactly. How exactly does that work? Don't think about it too much. Otherwise, it will hurt your head. I don't think you're intended to think it too much. But yeah, harvesting by acid rain.
They literally say they're melting them. They're not burning them. They're going to melt the trees, and then it's going to turn them into super awesome fuel. The greatest fuel in the universe, I believe he says at some point.
Yeah, I've just looked at the TARDIS wiki, and the planet in the Doctor Who wardrobe is described as planet. So that's I was hoping there was some like attendant media that told us exactly where it was, but no, it's just planet.
I also want to see like greatest fuels in the universe ranked, right? So you have Androzani trees, you have Jethric, You have trisilicate, like which this comes up as a trope, like in sci-fi, not just Doctor Who. It's your MacGuffin essentially, like to some extent. Like every episode has not every episode, but every episode that has this idea has a fuel that everyone kind of wants. It could be a political thing, like in the Monster of Peladon, or just something a little more of a ticking time bomb, like there is in this one, right? So it drives the plot forward.
So the Androzani stuff is set in the year 5345. Now that is
right
way after Caves of Androzani. Am I right?
Well, no, yes and no. I mean, I think originally people thought the Caves of Androzani was probably somewhere like in the 25th century or thereabouts. It's clearly an Earth colony because Earth is mentioned in the Caves of Androzani, but no year is given. So if you want to be consistent in Doctor Who's universe, you would probably then backdate Caves of Androzani to this adventure, to 5345. And I believe the A History chronicles, the books that try to place every single Doctor Who adventure in the same universe, does that. It basically puts Caves of Androzani like 100 years or something before this adventure, which is like, that's a reasonable thing.
Yeah, definitely the burning and melting of the trees makes no sense. I think I wasn't that bothered by it this time around. But you've got your big nitpick about this story out of the way, and I think it's time for mine. Apparently, first of all, thank you for going back to the original Christmas episode and finding out what the hell I said about this thing. Apparently, I found it forgettable on first watch. But it's better now. I don't know how I decided it was better now.
I think you had said you were pleased that I liked it based on Smith's performance.
Yeah.
And you're pleased there was a good episode here because you didn't really remember it that well.
Yes. And I had I still have this, a grubby feeling of too many British things packaged into something American. Narnia under the Christmas tree, Cyril as Harry Potter. Now, this time around, I was okay with the British stereotypes. And there are many of them, and we'll get into all of them. And all of the references, like, Alexander Armstrong and the RAF guy, we'll get into that. But the thing that I had a bad time with this time was Cyril.
Really?
And yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Maurice Cole. Like, I'm a Doctor Who guy through and through. Like, I don't believe in punishing the weak or anything like that. Weakness definitely a theme in this. He's weak. You mean he's a child? All of that stuff. But when I look at Cyril, I just want to steal his lunch money and stuff him into a locker. I was never a bully at school. It's the problem is Cyril.
Never be cruel or cowardly, Chris.
Never cruel or cowardly. But I will also never give in to this very, very lazy stereotype that Cyril is. And the problem is that Cyril is not really anything more than a pair of glasses.
Right.
In a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy dressing gown that he's wearing. I'm sure that was an intentional reference. It's exactly the same colors as Arthur Dent's in the TV show. Anyway, of course I would mention that. But
it's pretty conventional colors. I'll just say that. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, for most of the episode, Cyril has no one to talk to, right? So he's just sort of wandering through this forest alone, and he doesn't have any dialogue. And he doesn't have anything, really, to mark him out as a kid. He doesn't feel like a real child to me. He feels like just sort of a stand-in for, like, we're supposed to think that he's cute and sweet, and we're supposed to go like, like when he folds his arms and said, no, mummy will be here. Like, I get maybe this is the difference between, having children and not having children. I don't know. My response to Cyril is he's just a lazy, cutesy two-dimensional stereotype. Real kids are not like that. Like, he doesn't have a thing. He doesn't have a quirk.
Right.
He doesn't have something he's into. He doesn't have anything to hang on to make him a character, to make him unique in any way.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I would say I forgive a lot of things I would normally not forgive an episode or a Moffat episode of doing, and I will give you again the credit for identifying the problem with the character, but I'm okay with it echoing what it's trying to echo without much substance there, because I think that's a lot of what this episode's doing, right? With, you mentioned the Narnia stuff, which is, it's very superficial, but it looks nice. It's a cute sort of wrapping on a Doctor Who adventure to model it after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, Cyril, you could argue Harry Potter, maybe that's what they were going for. For me, it echoes the kid from The Christmas Story, or A Christmas Story. I forget what the that movie. It's sort of a semi-classic from, I think, the early 80s, but it's actually set in like the 60s or something like that.
My first American girlfriend, it was one of the first movies she made me watch to understand America. So.
Yeah, and my kids, like, I actually never watched The Christmas Story growing up, but I did watch it with my kids. And we watch it sort of semi-regularly at Christmas, and it's a fun thing to check out. And but to your point, I will say the kid in that movie has something he's into, and there's more depth there, and he
wants a gun,
really
right?
Resonate.
That's the whole thing. He wants
he
this,
wants
rifle.
the little BB gun.
Yeah,
and this Cyril is clearly like he's cute window dressing, and he's a plot device because he gets the whole thing going by opening the present and then goes to the planet. And yes, there's a good like if this was a 2-hour adventure. Again, I don't know if it would have been improved a lot, so I don't know if I would advocate for it, but you clearly need more fleshing out of some of the ideas to really have some substance. And one of them is the kids who really don't have much agency. I'll say this for Cyril, at least he's memorable with those glasses, and he has at least one really good line when it's at the very beginning where he's instructed to give these elaborate recap of where Madge is going with the doctor. And the husband comes in and is like, "Where did mommy go?" He just says, "Out."
Just out. It's a wonderful, like, yes, that's exactly what a kid would do. Like, I'm just ditching all of that important information you told me to relay. I
found it more memorable than Lily. Lily, I sort of really struggled as I was making my notes for the show. What is she about? What did she do? Like, even though she's the older sister, there isn't room for her. She's not filled with the angst and the conflict, the central conflict in Madge's mind. Lily is just one of the other kids, and again, there's just no agency with the kids. They just are there as props. They're there to kind of miss their dad and have big eyes when they sort of start to suspect he's gone, and sort of get the plot going. But they don't really do much other than that.
Yeah, other than sort of react to what the doctor is saying,
they give him someone to talk to.
Doctor. Yeah, which is just, it just is so lazy. Like, all you needed to do was add a line. And I'm actually writing it in my head as we were just, you were just talking there, Pete. I actually wrote a thing for Cyril that would make him more pop more as a character. What if he was really into planes? Right? And that's why he opens the box, because he thinks there's like a giant model aircraft in there or something. That's just a line of dialogue you could throw in. And then that gives you the big wonderful reveal at the end of, like, his dad brought him a plane for Christmas. And, you would have increased sympathy for him throughout, because, like, he's about to find out that his dad died in a plane. Oh my God. The thing that he's really into is going to be his downfall.
Yeah.
That poor kid. Like, I'm even just thinking about it now, like, I'm already feeling bad for Cyril instead of wanting to bully him.
If only you were script editor for the Moffat era, you could have stepped in.
Yeah.
That would have done something. Yeah, that would have been a little more. Then you don't need a lot more here. And honestly, you don't need a lot even with the existing script. I will say again, like, my general review of this is that, like, it's a Christmas treat, and it's wrapped up perfectly, and the ingredients are all there. You have, I mentioned Smith. He's at his sort of most Willy Wonka esque,
totally.
persona.
Very, very good.
But he also, like, one of the best scene, probably in my view, is just after he's shown everyone all the treats, all the rooms, and just like, I'm such a great, fun person. And then it's almost seemingly pulls a 180. because Madge's reaction is very like, I don't want this, in that moment. And the thoughtful exchange she has with Smith is like it's clearly Moffat worked hard on these lines. They're perfect.
Yeah.
And the way Matt Smith delivers his very wise line, you feel bad because they're going to feel bad, and it breaks your heart.
Yeah.
You don't want them to feel good now.
Yeah.
And it's so wise and sympathetic, like the empathy he's showing there.
So it's so applicable, I think, to life in general. Like, it reminds me of a line in The Good Place where they sort of tackle existentialism. I don't know if you've watched The Good Place, but Ted Danson's character has, he's immortal, but then he has this existential crisis and a midlife crisis, a wonderful episode. And then, Eleanor Shellstrop gets to deliver this amazing speech about how there's a little bit of sadness in every happy moment, because that happy moment's going to end. So it doesn't even have to be about the fact that they're going to find out that their dad died. It's more than that. It's like it's a guide for life in general, and who would know that more than a 1,000-year-old Time Lord, right?
Yeah, lost so much,
and that's sort of the undercurrent of this episode, is the Doctor is missing his companion, or missing any companions, which is sort of why you can read a lot into, like, why is he going so over the top for these kids? Well, partly because he's doing a good turn for Madge, because she did one for him years earlier. But I think also it's the sense of, like, he has to be clever, and he has to have people witnessing him be clever and special and Santa Claus-esque, and he's going to go so over the top because of the sadness, because he needs humans, because he becomes more humany womany, to use, I think, Moffat's most ill-judged line in this episode. It's sort of, there is a progression with him.
Again, I'm forgiving a lot of that, because the humany, I think it generally, those lines and parts of this, and overall, it doesn't really take itself too seriously.
Yes.
And I do see the humany woomany lines as kind of getting it out of his system. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we've done the timey-wimey again and again. We've come back to it, and it's like, he does this thing, and actually, they do come back to it later with Day of the Doctor, because you have to, because Tennant's there.
Right.
But I do like that it's okay. We're going over the top with it, and yes, we're just this once, guys. We're just going to get it out of the way. So that was fun.
Absolutely. In that scene, you can see all of the sadness, 1,000 years of sadness of losing companions, of having them age prematurely. Shout out to Sarah Kingdom. And, just losing them through your own ineptitude and your own inability to emote with them. So, there's so much buried into that line. And it's wonderfully kind of bookended by the prequel and also the denouement of the Doctor, Widow and Wardrobe, both sort of hinting at his missing of Amy.
Let's talk about that. So let's talk about the prequels first.
Yes.
So that's it's just a few minutes long, and it's essentially shows what happened right before the spaceship exploded and how the Doctor exploded it. And he calls Amy and leaves a message for her.
Now, yes, I'm going to stop you right there, because I see your complaint, and I did just watch the prequel last night because you mentioned this, and you're like, well, how does Amy think he's dead if he called Amy? He's actually calling the TARDIS. We cut to the TARDIS where the voicemail is being left, and it is actually just the Doctor thinking that Amy is still traveling with him. He's just automatically gone in his head to, I'll call the TARDIS, Amy will be there. So it's actually a way to amp up the sadness that she's no longer traveling with him.
Oh, I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'm dumb, or
it's not very clear. It's not very clear.
This was badly edited. and it should have been made more clear. And it's probably a
There's
good thing it's
one-
only on
there's-
the DVD.
Yeah, exactly. There's just one cutaway. If you watch it on YouTube, you'll see there's just one cutaway to the TARDIS to see that's where the message is coming out.
I get it. And he basically forgets for a second he doesn't have companions.
Yeah.
I got to say, it's funny. I was watching another episode with my daughter recently that does that better, and it's Partners in Crime. And there's a moment where Tennant is checking out whatever, I guess, an adipose or something, and he's in the TARDIS, and he's doing something with, and he's like, he just takes a step back. Oh my God, it's blah blah blah, and he starts talking, and he just looks up, and no one's there.
No.
And he's like, and he just shuts up, and because it's like, who am I talking to?
Right.
Like,
and he doesn't even give Martha the respect of saying, "Hey, Martha, come look at this." Like,
right.
He's forgotten her name already, but he knows he's alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Doctor.
He talks about her later, though.
But yeah, it does gives you a very sweet payoff, and I wish this had sort of been like, maybe the prequel should have been part of the actual show itself, and they could have leaned into it, because when he discovers that they've set a place for him at Christmas, oh God, hearts melt.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Matt Smith's eyes melt.
Not a dry eye in the house.
Yeah.
It's such a moment. Even, my kids were like that. We were all, I think, I don't know if Jack's going to listen to this, but I think he got up and left the couch, and he's a 13-year-old boy. So give him a break for this. I think he might have been a little bit teary, and I didn't want to.
Did it get dusty in the room? It probably got dusty in the room. Right about then.
I know. I was choking up for sure. I mean, it gets you, and that's. I mean, and how could you not love this episode for that? I mean, it's like it's tugging your heartstrings. That's what it's supposed to do. It's Christmas. This is the Doctor's family, and
we talked about how Matt Smith is really at the top of his game in this story, and I think none more so than in that final scene, which he really gives his everything, because you have to play, a 1,000-year-old Time Lord suddenly crying. For not necessarily for the first. Is it? No, it's not the first time.
It's not the first time.
It's the first time if you don't count Tennant, who would just like cry on command. I mean, he's famous for that in the GIFs now, right? Like, he's just crying all over the place. But Matt Smith really, really tugs our heartstrings by eking out that single tear. And watch him in that scene. He's just amazing.
Yeah. And you might honestly. It almost makes me want to forgive the 200-year gap from closing time, right? Which is that, because then when you even factor that in, it's probably been at least that long for him. It's been centuries probably since he's cried. Yes. And the fact that this brings it out of him is, even bigger if you think about it in that sense.
That's right. And he's, it's funny because he's been through all of that. He's been through all of these situations. The trees migrating and the mothership and the Reg returning and all of that, and none of that squeezed a tear out of him. Stuff that might have squeezed a tear out of us, the audience, but now it's like being missed, being wanted, being forgotten, not forgotten, being loved, having a place set for you.
And I think really that's okay, because I'll be honest, like all the stuff you just described, I wasn't particularly moved by it, just because it was a little by the numbers. It's very predictable. The moment you realize she has to think of him, her husband, to get back, that you basically know he's going to be saved at that point. And even if you didn't know from the setup earlier, and we're thinking that, like, it at that point. So while there's, that everything's played really well, it's very predictable. And then when you come back around for Amy and Rory, who, if you've been following the show, whether you're a fan of the whole show or just this era, like, that really gives it weight for you as the fan. And that's the stuff that's really going to get to you. And it does. Yeah. And it's really good.
And
So
a lot of
let's
people have
rewind
commented, by the way, that should have been Amy and Rory's end. What do you think about that? That, like, we missed the whole season 7A and that's just it? I think the problem with that is then you have to explain why the Doctor never goes to see Amy and Rory again after that Christmas, right? You sort of have to take them out of time with the Weeping Angel to really kind of definitively say this is why the Doctor is never going to see Amy and Rory again, except in a vision when he regenerates.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to. We'll get to season 7A throughout the podcast, but my general sense is it was a very unsatisfying end. Did we? There were a couple decent episodes in that run. I think a lot of people don't like it. I think it's definitely a weaker part of the Amy Rory run. But do you definitively have to end, or could you have believably made the bolder choice of them just kind of drifting apart, which might have been an interesting thing to explore, because they sort of, as they talk about in The Power of Three, you could have almost gone either way with that ending, if you know what I mean. Like The Power of Three and how the themes in that episode, and we'll get to that in the podcast eventually, could have, instead of them joining the Doctor, deciding that, like we kind of want to be grown-ups now. and, and then
you've got your own
come
life
back anytime, but we'll just be here, and then he kind of, because I feel like that would resonate with people who maybe grew up with them and are in their 20s, and you lose people, and even though you really love them, your lives change, and that would have been a better end, than them just being lost in time or whatever. Maybe less sci-fi, but I don't know. It would have been a bolder choice. Probably would have preferred that. But anyway, back to this episode.
Yes.
So let's go a little bit more on the cold open. I just want to mention one thing, like the spaceship exploding. Yes, of course, it's a trope. I think it's fine to do. I think it's, start with a bang. This is obviously from the Moffat playbook. Let's hit him over the head really early. I think it's shot really well. I'm going to say this, something I never thought I would. I admire Moffat's restraint in this part of the show, where he doesn't, I don't think he does anyway. There's nothing specified about the ship. You could have easily done some Cyberman or Dalek or Ice Warrior cameo and essentially ruined it, because then you're kind of, as a fan, trying to place it into your canon, but also like you're teased with this great thing that you love, and then you can't see it again. No, it's just a spaceship exploding, so that's good. And then it works with established continuity. We already know the Doctor can survive for short periods in the vacuum of space, and he does. And he puts on the spacesuit, and it leads to this whole fun thing with Madge later. So I think all of that is handled really well. The dialogue with him and Madge when he lands, it's all. I'm going to praise it, and then I'm going to slam it a little bit. It's hilarious. Love the stuff. Love that she picks the lock. She's super fun. And then there's a police box, which is is really funny. It's like one of the best lines in it is like, all right, suddenly the last 900 years of travel seem a little less secure now that you picked my TARDIS with a hairpin.
She picks the lock. Small nitpick with that is the obviously police boxes, and this has been mentioned in the show, police boxes of the era did not look like the Doctor's TARDIS. Doctor's TARDIS too large.
Well, I'll fill that in later. But the one of the things that bothers me about Claire Skinner's character, Madge, and this scene is that she doesn't act like a real person. Like her behavior, and I thought about this a lot, because she the way she behaves towards a spacesuited man with his head on backwards, and it's just like, okay, this is a Moffat thing that he does. He's done it in other episodes, and in particular another Christmas episode, like the Snowman, the way Clara acts to the Doctor early in that adventure. It's just not, he doesn't write people the same way Davies does, which is very real and down to earth. He writes his people more as sort of fantasy characters, which is kind of okay, because that's what he's going for. But I find it less okay just because it takes me out of the show. Didn't this time as much. And I thought about why. And I think there's a few reasons. This is one, the title of the episode already sets you up for sort of fantasy world. So you're kind of expecting sort of larger than life characters, right? People who are sort of unreal. Yeah. Also knowing that Madge isn't going to be a companion, contrasting with Clara in the Snowman. I don't need to start to relate to her. If it just ends up being this sort of unrelatable person the whole time, I'm not offended by that. And I will also just give a lot of points to Claire Skinner herself, who understood the assignment. Like she's very, very good as Madge,
Oh,
and
she's amazing.
sort of, yeah. And she really tries to balance that I'm a believable mother, feeling believable mother emotions, but also behaving in this sort of fantasy world like way that my writer showrunner is telling me to. So she
Yeah.
finds that balance. So all of that is why here, even though it's standard Moffat unreality, I'm kind of okay. I don't mind being in that reality.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to talk about here, but let's talk about Madge first. I mean, the episode really does fall on her shoulders, and if you had a lesser actor in that role, it could have completely fallen apart, because you have to believe that she's, for want of a better phrase, a mama bear, right? That she will, shoot these random Androzani people because she's looking for her children. You have to believe that she is fierce and strong, and because that is the reveal, that she is the only one who's strong enough to take the entire race of trees in her head and deliver them home, because she is a mothership. She's a mother. And the story does risk, I think, being a little too condescending towards mothers. It's not necessarily a problem, like especially at Christmas. It's a nice Christmassy message. And, we've talked before in the show about the Moffat style of, like, it's a Christmas Day story, you have to shout louder to be heard in the living room. And I just love the idea that mums around the UK watched this and looked at the people around after having sweated and slaved over the Christmas meal, like, yeah, see, yeah, it's mom who's the really powerful one.
Just so everyone knows, I slaved over my own Christmas meal the past couple of years, so dads can do that too.
Nicely done. But yeah, it is a bit condescending in a sort of a Victorian way. I was reading recently about the Victorian notion of women, the way they were sort of treated as, quote unquote, the angel in the house. And it's a little bit Victorian that the Doctor sort of keeps pushing Madge to think of home. That's how she gets them home. She's being the angel of the house, right? That's very, very Victorian style. It's not necessarily giving her all the agency in the world, but it is, it's a nice one for the mums. I'll just say that, So to pull in the other direction, you mentioned Narnia, and we shouldn't go too far without mentioning that this is the Christmas special after A Christmas Carol, which was pretty much a straight-up adaptation, or as close as Doctor Who ever gets. Right. And I think a lot of people were expecting this to be more Narnia-esque, right? That maybe you'd have a snow queen, and maybe you'd have a lion. It doesn't go that on the nose, although you could argue that the Doctor, since he regenerates, is Aslan. But what did you think? Did you want more Narnia in this? Were you expecting more Narnia?
Definitely was expecting more Narnia, and I probably would have preferred it in terms of the meat of the story, because honestly, once it gets to the snow planet, it kind of goes in random and kind of irrelevant and extraneous directions that you just kind of don't care about. I mentioned the Androzani stuff, which makes no sense. And there's a decent scene where there's a little bit of comedy there, but you're not getting much in the way of a point. And there's a bit of an environmental point, which is a weird thing to come out of at the at Christmas. Okay, sure. Don't burn down the trees. Don't melt the trees. On board with that. Thank you. But
yeah, well, I guess if you've got a Christmas tree in your living room, you might be thinking about trees and forests. So I can see it.
Yeah, there's just not much there. It's kind of like, oh yeah, this was big and loud and fun, and it's well decorated Christmas cracker. But once you pull it out, there's a big pop, and then there's just not much there. So,
except a couple of large wooden statues.
Well, and one of the things plot wise, like again, you don't want to pick too hard at the plot because the emotional beats hit so well. But I got to say, one thing that really stuck out was that Christmas bauble that comes out of the tree that Cyril touches, and it hatches, right? And seemingly hatches into that king-like tree person, treant. I don't know what they're called, but
The
why?
Ent.
Yeah, the end. Like, but why did that particular one hatch into the king? Was it just a coincidence that Cyril was there to hatch it? What if Cyril had never been there, and this all proceeds in some other way? Because basically, it's a bit of almost like a mislead, even though it is part of the plot. You're kind of thinking like, oh, are all of these baubles going to hatch? And then when they don't, you're kind of like, well, what was that? And you know, kind of goes. It's reasonably well paced, so you don't spend too much time on it. But I do remember thinking like, this is going to be answered later at some point. It's never answered. It's just these two tree creatures end up at the lighthouse, and that's what we're doing now. And it's all wood.
By the way, I love the idea that the lighthouse is all constructed of wood. I definitely want to see the trees that can make transparent windows out of wood. I love that the Doctor argues with the Sonic. That was one of my favorite lines that I'd completely forgotten about. And he's like, oh, monsters made of wood. And he looks at the Sonic. He's like, you knew this was going to happen. Which eventually, of course, I'm going to. But also, I like the idea, and it sort of becomes canon at this point, that the reason the Sonic can't handle wood is that it's just sort of a bit afraid of it. It's just like the Sonic's just like, oh no, I don't do natural materials. Sorry, it's not my thing. I'm more of a metal-based device. But that it can. I mean, it's sort of we get at this with the Day of the Doctor, obviously, where they're trying to do the program with the Sonic to get it to figure out the wood in the door at the Tower of London. Remember?
Right.
It can handle wood, but over hundreds of years.
The wood thing's pretty, like, I mean, again, it's one of these things in lots of sci-fi tropes that don't make sense. I see it as like yellow lanterns, or the yellow color, not really like Green Lantern can do anything unless he has like to, crush a banana or something. Like,
right. You have to
doesn't work on yellow things.
You have to introduce a kryptonite for every superhero or superhero-like device.
And it kind of takes. It gives you a way to write out the Sonic when you don't want the Doctor to use it. So I thought that was fine and fun. Like you say, it is a fun, like Smith is great here and he's talking to the Sonic and all that's good. What I didn't like these two tree creatures, they never fully make them scary and they never make them fully relevant. And they also do the trope of let's touch a person and speak through them with their voice. But why did you then create a tree form with a mouth if you're not going to use it?
Good point. Good point. I have a mouth and I must scream through someone else. It's a little weird. I think you can finesse and explain away a lot of the tree stuff, especially this notion of like, how did they know Cyril was coming? How did they know the Doctor was coming? By the simple fact that they have access to the time vortex, which, by the way, I'm going to get it in early here, a reason why the randomizer brought us here. We recently discovered in The Sound of Drums that the Master saw the time vortex right through the untempered schism.
Oh, right.
And it was the show's credits, the opening credits. and the same is true here for the time vortex when we're going through it. It's the Matt Smith opening credits. So the tree creatures can travel in time. Their ship can travel in time. And that can explain away a lot of like, how did they know this is going to happen? Just throw in some time vortex based headcanon about how they can see the future and Digby's your uncle.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, sure. Whatever. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. Let him off.
That's fine. Is it good? No answer. Let's talk a little bit more about the comedy trio of your Androzani. I don't even know what they are. Are they mercenaries? Are they workers? Are they tree melters? I don't think they ever really say. They just have
harvest rangers, according to the wiki. They're harvest rangers. They're to harvest trees.
Then why do they have guns, right? Like, they clearly have some sort of security component to them. So here's the thing. I thought that scene was great. And I kind of wanted to see more of them because almost as soon as they show up, they're gone because they have the one fun scene with Madge. Madge gets a great triumphant moment when she pulls out a revolver after they've put down their guns and takes charge of the scene. Really fun, hilarious lines where they're scanning her and wait, she's armed. Oh no, wait, it's just she's wearing wool and it gets confused with wool.
Yeah.
Which is like really contrived, but I just thought that it was really funny because he has that line, surely we could tell the difference between a sweater and like a weapon, right? Like,
yeah. I mean that's nicely echoing the Sonic's problem with wood, so I kind of like that. But no, my big problem here is actually those other two characters, not the scanners. So Bill Bailey, I don't know how big a name he is over here.
Is he related to George Bailey?
He's not.
Christmas.
Yeah, nice reference. But no, Bill Bailey is a British comedian, mostly known as a comedian, and a musical comedian. Like he often sits at the piano, and one of his sketches that he actually did, I believe, with the London Symphony Orchestra. He did a whole thing where he's sort of like doing a comedy show, but a lot of it was about music. And he does a song, he does a whole segment, a whole sketch where he takes the Doctor Who theme and turns it into 1950s Belgian jazz.
Okay.
And he's like,
fulfilling some demand somewhere.
Yeah, which is, but it's brilliant. Like he really goes into this. Apparently, this started out as a thing in the Comedy Store where he just like there was a beret off stage. He just did it as an improv bit, and then he starts playing the Doctor Who theme because he's a massive Doctor Who fan himself.
Nice.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Subscribe. Bailey.
I wouldn't be surprised if Moffat threw in the Androzani reference just to get him on board. Like, you get to play an Androzani Ranger. Ooh, cool. But the great thing about that Doctor Who theme becoming 50s Belgian jazz is he starts, like, you think he's just going to play the music, but then he starts this whole French, like Jacques Brel kind of style, and he starts talking about Dr. Key. C'est Louis, nice. Dr. Key. So he's Doctor Who royalty already, and he doesn't get enough to say or do in this. Arabella Weir is the comedian who's next to him, the one who's worried about the optics.
Yeah, it seemed pretty clear this is like comedic actors.
Yes. Now, not only is she a comedian, she was the first female Doctor.
Really?
Yes, in Big Finish. Do you remember in the 90s, Big Finish did the Unbound series? Which was sort of like
vaguely
alternate universes, and she was an alternate third Doctor.
Okay.
Where she's been exiled, and like I guess the Doctor doesn't turn into Pertwee, he turns into her, and a lot of fans are upset because there's like burping and farting in her, like her character kind of. The Doctor's let herself go after all this time on Earth. Like it's the opposite of the Doctor getting a job with UNIT. And she, and also, fun fact about Arabella Weir, also in that episode was David Tennant, who was her lodger.
Oh, wow. Now I kind of want to listen to this.
Yeah, right? Definitely put that in your Big Finish list because it sort of got, he just moved to London, like nobody knew who he was as an actor. He was staying in her apartment, cut 2 years later, she's going out with him, like gets recognized as the Doctor everywhere. And some fans recognize her as the Doctor too. Like they don't even know that there are two Doctors walking around. So lovely, lovely story. And she barely gets any lines.
They're memorable at least. I mean, she talks about respecting as a woman, and she gets to interact with Madge and show sympathy. But like I say, as soon as they're there, they're kind of transmatted away.
Yep.
And then we have the rest of the story. I would love to see an alternate version of this where they don't transmat away, and Madge and the Rangers all have to go in the tower. And there's basically more opportunities for sort of witty dialogue and sort of people to do things. And then they end up all back on Earth together. And and you have the problem of these people from the future there, but that's easily the Doctor will just drop them off whenever, right? And so then they're all there for Christmas dinner, And it's just like this great, weird Christmas where you have the survivor RAF pilot, you have the family, you have the doctor, and these weirdos from the future just kind of like, all right, here we are. What's up? Merry Christmas.
Talk about found family. Yeah. And you go even deeper into this notion of, Doctor Who as a real thing in Doctor Who world that we've already talked about, with this notion of like, that they could be like, what do we do now? And the Doctor's just like, oh, just go to fan conventions and say you're from Androzani. People will be all over you. The cosplay, charge $1 a photo. You'll be great. So I'm going to make one more British comedian reference, and then I'm done. And that is to Alexander Armstrong, who plays Reg, the RAF pilot.
Oh, yeah.
Now, have you seen any of the RAF airmen sketches that Alexander Armstrong is involved in? If you just
I haven't, I don't think so.
If you just Google Alexander Armstrong RAF, or Armstrong and Miller was the name of the comedy show that he was in, RAF Airmen, they did this amazing sketch which was hilarious, which is like visually it looks very 1940s. They're dressed as RAF Airmen. It's in black and white. It's got that kind of sepia tone thing, the crackling audio, all of that. And they're talking in very posh accents. But what they're saying, all of their dialogue is like from London youth of the 2010s. So they keep saying, instead of saying in it, which is very London, they say, oh, isn't it? Yes. Lost my leg and stuff, blood, isn't it? Like, how I like, and there is one sketch where Alexander Armstrong's character is in bed after having just crashed his plane.
Oh, all right.
Where
Deep cut
he's like,
for
yeah, exactly.
comedy.
But I just love the line, and it's appropriate for this podcast because he's in bed. He's like, like how many legs I had before, and the other airman's like, oh, 2 or some shit like that. And he's like, yeah, blood. And now I've only got 1. And the other airman says, random. I love that. Those sketches are just completely, I just wish every American could see them. I think they're hilarious. Look them up on YouTube. I guess we can put some links in the show notes. But that's why it's so funny that Alexander Armstrong is playing an RAF airman in this and playing him sort of seriously, because you cannot necessarily, if you've seen those sketches, take him seriously.
Okay.
Yeah. Hot tip for YouTube viewing here on Pull to Open.
Yeah. Oh, well, lots of comedy royalty in this episode, apparently.
Very underused. Very
underutilized. I was just going to say. And as much as, we were all happy to see Reg, he's not like the character is a millimeter thin, and he just knows that we know he's a good man because he's trying to reassure his co-pilot that they're about to crash, but it's going to be okay. And then he follows the star, and then he ends up landing, and it's all good, and everybody lives, and that's okay. I like the everybody lives. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a bit of a Moffat-y trope, but it's okay. It works. And the most that Reg
too.
Exactly. And the most that Reg gets to do, and I'd totally forgotten about this, is right at the end, like where he goes up to the attic as the Doctor is just warping away, and Madge is staring at the TARDIS, and he's like, "What was that?" And she actually tells him the truth. It's it's the caretaker taking his time machine into the time vortex or whatever, which is a great line. And he just has this sort of like looking perplexed for a bit, like should I be thinking harder about this? And then he's just like, nah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and it again totally works. I will say also again lines that people don't say, right? Like again, it's another thing of that putting Madge on this sort of fantasy character world, but it's fine. I mean, if it hasn't bothered you till now, I mean, why would it?
Exactly. In Steven Moffat world, all Earth characters are full of great quips rather. Right? That's just kind of what they're there for. They're there to be witty.
Yeah. So that answers a lot of questions, and now we're going to answer some more questions about the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. And those questions are the 4 questions to Doomsday. And the first question, as ever, is why did the randomizer take us here? Which, of course, we've already touched on as we do, but there might be some direct
Yes.
reasons. I'm gonna go for mine first because I want you to have a better reason because mine's a little bit angry. So it took us to last time another holiday special, Revolution of the Daleks, and within that special, we had the Doctor returning from being away for a long time to her companions, and they're being kind of mad at her, like
Yes.
really mad at her, and how could you do this? And Yaz even shoves the Jodie Whittaker Doctor.
Yeah.
That's like her first reaction. And here there's an echo of that, right? With Smith coming back to Amy at the end of this episode. And I'll just say this is much better handled. I think this comes in, he's there, she's kind of mad at him, but she's kind of fake mad at him, and they both know it. And I think it's such a, I mean, we already talked about the scene, but it's such a good scene. But it's also such a good scene because these two actors who are good friends, as I think everyone knows, know each other so well, know their characters so well. And you're there, like, I mean, with them, and you're just like, come on, you guys, hug it out. And then they just, and they just have this great warm hug. And I think in addition to this showing the proper way to handle sort of this emotional beat, even though I understand Revolution was going something different. We've talked about that in that podcast that we didn't think it worked. But it also, in my view, bookends The Beast Below, which we were at, not too long ago, a couple of months ago, shows I believe it's the first hug between the Matt Smith Doctor and Amy in that one at the very end of that episode.
Good call,
and I feel like this really punctuates the Smith era, at least the Amy Rory part, where just how sort of warm and human he is in that era, and like how that is different from David Tennant, right? But David Tennant was, obviously great. He was very fun and happy in his own way, but that scene where Matt Smith's crying at the end, and it just really gets you on this human level that I don't think even Tennant's era was capable of, really.
Yeah. Yaz should have had a water pistol in her hand. I think that's what we're learning here. Instead of shoving the Doctor, I'm mad at you. I'm splooshing you. But you're absolutely that great. I love watching it because it's just a wordless scene of like, well, I'm not going to hug first. I'm not going to hug. It's going to have to be you. And they both sort of look at each other, and their facial expressions kind of finally come round to the hug. And it's perfect. It is such an excellent example of how that happens. And
it's just really like, how could we possibly let something get in the way of this deep, deep friendship we have? And we're asking that, and of course, and then again, like in Revolution of the Daleks, that's why it's a little bit angry. Like I'm like, you're frustratedly asking that in a sense, like why? How could you possibly be letting this get between you two? Like she's back,
right?
Like,
she was in space jail. She doesn't even have Smith's excuse what is Ms. Smith's? I can't even remember why he had to let them think he was dead. It was like, I know he's going a bit more low key in the universe overall, but why did that have to include Amy and Rory? So he has less of an excuse than the Doctor in space jail, which is perfectly legit. 79 billion years away, couldn't get a message home. So anyway,
I want to say thank you, Randomizer, for the cleanser.
Yes.
Anyway, go
nicely
ahead.
handled. I think that is actually better than mine. All I had is that, well, we've mentioned the holiday special mood. The Randomizer is belatedly filling our request for that. The three companion story, it's kind of on a tear with that. But also it's another country house, just like Black Orchid. And does make me think, like, where is Uncle Digby? I know Digby is a reference to the character from The Magician's Nephew and Lion, the Witch and Wardrobe, but like that's never answered. Why is he not there? And how is the Doctor just able to take it over? So I wonder if there's something else going on there, something more sinister.
Maybe
that might give us more Black Orchid vibes.
Well, Could be something sinister. We're going to have to identify something sinister for our next question, which, of course, is what if the evil plot had succeeded? And is there an evil plot here? I'm just not really sure. I guess the melting of the trees, maybe, and what those guys have planned. Because honestly, if you think about it, how is there not a failsafe once you realize there are people down here? You know?
Yeah.
That's kind of evil, isn't it? Like,
Totally
there's people down
evil.
here. Maybe hit the stop button on that melting thing you're going to do for a second while you make sure everything's clear.
I mean, it sort of does succeed, right? If that's the evil plot, they do actually melt down the trees and get their energy.
Well, I guess it's not part of their plot, but presumably something happens. Maybe Madge doesn't get out of the loader in time, and she ends up getting melted by the acid rain, so she doesn't get in. Therefore, there isn't the right vessel for the tree spirits. They can't get off the planet, and everybody dies, which is a bit of a downer for a Christmas episode. But again, it's no one's idea. And
yeah, exactly. I don't think that counts as the evil plot. You know what I think might be closest to an evil plot here is the Doctor putting a multi-dimensional gateway inside a present that, without being aware that children always open their presents early. Now, a lot of people take the Doctor to task for this in this story. I'm going to counter it with the fact that it's sort of a great example of how, of course the Doctor should have realized that this wasn't safe. But it's already established, this episode has already established the Doctor is not great at security. Madge can just lock pick her way into the TARDIS. But also,
but that wasn't the TARDIS. That's the joke.
Well, yes, yeah, okay. Yes, but anyway, he's not he's not great at security. He's also not great at he's clearly not great at security because the door comes off at the country house that he's when he welcomes them in. So there's another reason. But also it's developed a fault. I love that line. And I love the fact that he doesn't recognize that the stairs don't move. He's like, oh God, we have to walk up them. But I think that what this all tells us is the Doctor's kind of going off his rocker a bit. He's perhaps a few leaves short of the full tree, or a few needles short of the full evergreen. In this episode, this is exhibit A through Z of why the Doctor needs humans, why he needs companions. So I actually kind of like that. And yes, it's sort of, I guess it's not even an evil plot, even from the Doc's perspective, because it was kind of meant to happen, and they get to save the trees. Madge gets to, Reg wouldn't be alive without all the mishaps around that present. So not particularly
So your evil plot is the Doctor's. In that it's not really evil, but it is crazy and doesn't take well into account the ephemerality and vulnerability of humans, which I like. I like that idea.
If it had succeeded, here's the question. If the kids had gone through that portal when they were supposed to on Christmas Day, would they have arrived too late?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Would they just have arrived in a very non-Christmassy melted forest?
Yeah.
Ponder that one.
Yeah, I think they would have. So
the moral of the story is let your kids run around through multi-dimensional gateways into forests where they're all alone, because it'll all work out in the end.
Yeah, one thing I didn't get a chance to say about Cyril, by the way, in there, I thought he was relatively smart as a kid, sort of going in and out of the portal a few times, because that's what you should do. You should make sure you can get back. Yep. And he kind of does that. So points for him doing that, because too many times you sort of see people go through these gateways and are just like, oh, I'll just start wandering around in this other world. But wait a minute, can I get back? And he confirms that he can. So it's that's cool. That's
right. And poor Cyril not getting any Turkish delight from the Snow Queen. Really, that's a kid who needs some Turkish delight in his life. That much I can tell about Cyril.
Maybe some treats could be coming his way via someone else someone who may be in this story somewhere, but we not sure where. Let's see if we can find a place for her. In our next question, which is, where is the Clara Splinter? Clara Oswald, as we all know, splintered at the end of The Name of the Doctor across the Doctor's time stream. And she might be somewhere here setting
and
the
this
stage
is
for this.
also a very, very interesting episode to ask this question, because we are one story ahead of the appearance of the first Clara Splinter in Asylum of the Daleks.
That's true, yeah.
We're on the threshold of Souffle Girl. And so you got to think this is probably a very big Splinter, since it's so close in time. And that she's got to have a big... I mean, maybe in some way she's encouraging Cyril to go through that gateway, because if they go through it too late, it'll all be acid rain.
So is she like an auntie or something?
Yeah, she just appears in the living room in a cut scene that we never get to see, and be like, "Come on, Cyril, it's all right. The doctor said you could open it early. It's fine."
And she's dressed up like Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, exactly.
What's she doing there?
Oh, she comes down the chimney. She's like, "It's okay, Cyril. Santa says open it early."
Oh, okay. That could happen. I don't know if you needed extra motivation. So I had two ideas here.
Yeah.
One, I think Clara could be a groundskeeper for that country manor, and she's just making sure the yard's big enough and flat enough, like it's cleared, so that a plane can land somewhere like just outside the house. Just make sure it's nice and big, lots of room. So that's a possibility. The other one that I think I prefer is that she essentially is on the auxiliary police force in Madge's neighborhood at the beginning of the story. And she is just making sure all those police boxes in the area are just totally up to snuff. They are perfect. They have their own lights. They are fully upgraded from your regular everyday police boxes that you find elsewhere. And so these are sort of special custom jobs. And she's made them to look basically identical to an echo in her head of the 11th Doctor's TARDIS.
Yeah, the St. John's Ambulance TARDIS version. Yeah, I love that idea. She could also... Actually, I mean, this could be an interesting time for the Clara Splinter to think that she's helping the Doctor, but like Madge, isn't accounting for Madge coming along. Like she's making the path to the TARDIS easier for a man with a spacesuit on backwards somehow, but isn't accounting for him being found by Madge. It's just looking at this all unfolding. It's like, oh damn it. I was.
Who's this chick?
Exactly. This is my job. She's waiting with the getaway car, but she just arrives a little too late or something.
I love that she's like just off screen, like, and she just kind of turns around, like dejected.
God damn it! Now they're going to go to the wrong TARDIS. They're going to go to the wrong police box because I wasn't there to drive them to the right one.
Awesome. All right, so there's some good explanations, and finally, we get to the final question, the only question, the one question everyone's been waiting for. What are we going to rate this episode? And of course, our rating system has 4 different levels. There is a Dalek, which is a good episode of Doctor Who, an Ogron, which is a perhaps not so good episode of Doctor Who, the Professor Hater, which is a not so good episode, but hey, at least we learned something, or the Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best of Doctor Who stories.
Get your bingo cards ready. I'm tempted to say that Cyril grows up into Professor Hater.
Okay, check the timing on that. So 1941.
That could work.
Not bad.
He could be like
50 something in 1980.
Exactly, like he's 9 years old in this, so that could totally work.
I like it.
Yeah, he goes to Darlington University and becomes a Darlington man. He becomes Professor Hater. His full name is Cyril Hater.
Why would he think everyone's hallucinating, though? That's weird. He gets really cynical when he gets out of college.
Yeah, exactly, and really loves fish and chips. But yes, no, I don't think I don't think it's a Professor Hater. I think it's a Dalek. I think my second full viewing, in which I was thoroughly surprised to find out that this had a plot, is it wasn't just a random series of Christmas lights. It's a Dalek for me. It's not. It's more a sort of a plasticky Christmas Dalek.
Oh, yeah?
Like a bad 70s. It's like a 70s Dalek lunchbox.
Interesting. I like it. It's a Dalek for me too. It's definitely a holiday Dalek. It's red with green balls, or the other way around. It's got more twinkling lights than you can count, more than the Supreme Dalek in the Planet of the Daleks with the flashlight blinker. It's got even more blinkers all around it. It's a holiday Dalek.
Daleks are not festive. Explain.
Yeah, my kids both liked it. Jack even said it was lighthearted fun. He really enjoyed the last bit with Amy and Rory. And I already said what Grace thought of it. She really loves the Willy Wonka, Matt Smith, Doctor, and all the, like, he's just so good with kids in this episode. Obviously, purposefully, but really, really delivers. So
I think without Matt Smith and without Claire Skinner, I think that this would have been a different story, much more likely to have fallen into Ogron territory, but they save it, they make it a Dalek. And of course, now we want to find out what you think of our 4 questions, because we are right, Pete. We're going to put that in the Q&A.
We're doing this
below it.
So, Spotify listeners, check out your app. There is a poll for you there to ask what you think of the episode and what you think of some of our answers to these questions. And hopefully you can also leave your own. So TBD on what you guys think. And again, we'll add your rating to the codex, assuming we get a critical mass of response. So make sure you respond, Spotify listeners.
Yeah, in a very timey-wimey way. You are in the future, and you get to decide this. And we don't even know what questions are there right now. But go ahead and answer them.
Okay. Work in progress, this segment. Anyway, no, what is not a work in progress is our next segment, which of course is when we close the door to our TARDIS, activate the console, and hit that randomizer button to find out which Doctor Who adventure we're going to next. As longtime Pull to Open listeners know, the randomizer consists of 2 parts. One is the Pull to Open Codex, which I have in front of me now, a spreadsheet that contains every single televised episode of Doctor Who in sequential order. And the codex has been upgraded recently so that we no longer will ram into time-locked episodes, which is to say episodes we've already been to. And we will soon spin it up with the random element, which of course is what, Chris?
Is random.org, the website that looks for atmospheric noise and random ships ejected from the time vortex in the atmosphere, uses that to generate a random number, because true randomness can only emerge from something that is not based on a computer algorithm that guesses at randomness. I plug in the number 1, that is a constant, into random.org, and we used to do it so that it was 302, and then we'd have time-locked episodes. But how we're doing it now is also a way that lets us see how many episodes of Pull to Open we have left. So, Pete, what is the big number?
The number currently is 232.
Wow.
Yep.
It is so close to the end, I can taste it.
232 Doctor Who adventures we have yet to experience. So that is the number Chris is going to plug into the randomizer.
Is it time for me to say I don't want to go? No, I don't. I'll do that.
Your challenge for the randomizer? Take us to an episode where those words are uttered. We've already gone to a couple, I think.
No, I think I'm just thinking when we get down to like double digits, I'm gonna be saying that every time I hit the generate button.
It's true.
My challenge to the randomizer is please be nice to our guests, because we will have guests next week. Whatever we're choosing here is not just for us; it's for them. It's for the Cloister Bell podcast. So please just don't do anything too long. Please don't do any 6-parters. Don't do any like invasion of the dinosaurs. Like, nothing of
the
that.
Invasion with the war games.
Oh God, yeah! Please don't. Just don't do it. I'm begging. I'm on bended knee, randomizer. Just give us a nice, easy, like preferably new Who or something short and old Who, like Edge of Destruction. Just don't give us war games or Daleks Master Plan.
Okay, good.
Please don't embarrass us in front of the guests, randomizer.
That's a good challenge. I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm glad you covered that, by the way. So I hope he listens to you, although now I feel like you're jinxing it. But we've just been to a couple of holiday specials. We were at Black Orchid. I'm going to do it. Randomizer, flip the switch. Take us to something dark. Something maybe even violent.
Whoa.
Yeah. Dude, do something like challenge us. Give us some adult themes. Let's do this.
I actually like that. Yeah, that's a good challenge for this randomizer, which seems to have gone a bit too kid-friendly in recent times. And of course, that is definitely a feature of Doctor Who, but there's also the dark side. So yes, all right. Well, if you give me a countdown, we will find out where our ship is taking us next. We are completely at its mercy.
All right, spinning the wheel in 4, 3, 2, 1.
Blow, show. 156.
156.
That's right on the borderline.
At the waters of Mars.
Whoa. Okay.
Speaking of specials.
It listened to us. It listened to both of us, Pete. I think this is a first time that it's actually done it because Waters of Mars gets pretty dark.
That's getting dark, and it's a one episoder. It's one of the specials from 2009, David Tennant's last few adventures.
Yeah, and he doesn't say I don't want to go, but he's getting close. Yeah,
it just missed, right? You just missed that. Wow, that's amazing. This is really, really interesting. It's funny. It was when you read the number, it's funny. The old way we did the randomizer with the show numbers, you could kind of tell where we were in New Who versus Classic Who by the number.
Right, 150 was about the dividing line, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of like a mystery. If it's really high or really low, you kind of know. But I really wasn't sure where that was going to take us. So this is good to know.
It was either going to be the end of McCoy or it might have been in the TV movie. But no, it's like, I guess we've done enough of the classic series to shift it all the way to where, like, we're at the end of the Tennant era at 156 now. That's fascinating.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to, Mr. Spock even. And we're all going to be fascinated next week. Guys, just as Chris said, we're going to have guests next week. So please tune in then. We're going to have the guys, Rob and Liam from the Cloister Bell podcast. It's going to be great. There's going to be double your commentary, double your fun. Hopefully it won't be double the length. I'm going to make that promise now. We're going to keep it tight. But folks, it's a podcast. So what can you do? Well, you could subscribe to our podcast and hit that button wherever you are, especially if you're on YouTube, which would really help us out there. Also, if you're on YouTube and you're subscribed there, why not hit the bell button so you get informed whenever we have new content? Subscribe to us, of course, on whatever app you're on. If you're on a podcast app, please follow us on social at Pull2Open on TikTok, Pull2Open63 on Twitter and Instagram. Once again, Spotify listeners, we're going to do special things for you there with polls, and we'd love it if you could return the favor and do something special for us by rating the podcast whenever you get a chance. And hey, special thanks. I want to shout out, I don't shout him out enough, to Martin West and Thinking Fish for a lot of our music. We use it every week. Thank you so much, Martin. And we will see you next week when we have guests and we talk about the David Tennant special, The Waters of Mars. Any last words, Chris?
Yes, we haven't done it. We didn't mention it this time, but please leave us an emoji review. I think Doctor Who titles in emoji form. We didn't do it this week. We will do it again in future. Waters of Mars, like that's going to be too easy. Red dot, wave emoji.
Well, get creative. There's a zombie emoji too, right?
That's true. You get more creative than that. There you go. But please just leave us emoji reviews and we will read them out on the show. We always have fun with those. So yes,
and any of those places, Twitter, Instagram, I forget all the places. TikTok, etc. Reviews are the best place to leave them, by the way.
Yes.
And guys, we will see you next week with guests. Take care.